but it is now 7 o'clock, ready to
Okay.
start. Suzanne, once again, thank you for joining me. We are here to showcase one of your products. Teachers, viewers, family, friends, thank you so much for joining us tonight, taking out time out of your very, very busy day. And tonight we have a surprise for you. We have a very, very new product, very new technique, very new, fresh way of learning a different language. So I'm here today, once again with Suzanne Rajkumar. I hope I
Yes,
pronounced it right.
it's perfect.
And we're just going to take some time to introduce her. We have her profile here on page, but while that's there, Suzanne, we very much like for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Trevon, and hello to everyone who is tuning in to listen to us today and to find out about it. I am from Trinidad and Tobago originally, but I'm coming in from Honduras, where I've been living and working for the last 19 years, going on 20. And I've been working with um, middle and upper level executive managers for most of that time, and through which all of that experience has channeled into the products that I have and that I use in my classes. So there's been a lot of custom designing, and there's been a lot of lesson planning for specific purposes with what it is I've been doing in Honduras. And for me, it's really a pleasure to be here with Project Jaguar, which I think is a phenomenal opportunity, for teachers. And being a teacher who's also, there's a term, teacherpreneur,
I love
coming
that
up.
term.
Yeah, there's edupreneurs, teacherpreneurs, teachers who can take their skill sets that they've been using for years and turn it into a business model. This is Project Jaguar is a huge platform for us, and for that I am grateful. Thank you, Trevor, for
Yes.
inviting.
Anytime, anytime for you, Suzanne. So, uh, since you've introduced yourself and you have such a wide portfolio, I'll probably only spend a few seconds telling the viewers about myself. My name is Jovan Solomon. I am the current co-founder of Project Jaguar. We are an academic platform for teachers and students, and we have become a very, very close partner with CBC, which remind the viewers what the CBC stand for.
It's corporate bilingual consultancy.
Corporate Bilingual Consultancy. Yes, you've also reminded me. I have terrible memory. So, so we're very committed to making sure that Suzanne, teachers like Suzanne, have a platform in which they can launch their products, launch their classes, and launch their courses off of. So we're very honored to be partnered with you, to be showcasing your product tonight, and I'm looking to see what comes out of this. All right.
Okay. Yes, we
So,
are excited too.
all right. So we have a video that we want to show that you have had, which gives a really nice introduction to the Codebreakers card. So I'm going to switch over to that video. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
So please just allow me a few seconds to load that up. And you may have to tell me when to pause the video. Or
Okay
if
then.
you want to explain it afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, or I can. The video basically is an introduction. It was kind of our introductory video when the games were first created.
Mhm.
Um, the version that you see in the video was, as a teacherpreneur, and coming back to that, teachers trying to get into the business is not an easy thing. It's something that has a lot of challenges in the process. So making this video was quite a challenge in itself. So it showcases getting the people, the timing, the elements that everyone will be looking at. So, for example, when it comes across, you will get a brief idea of what the game is, and then from that we can take it from there.
Okay, no problem. So I'll go ahead and play the video now.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, my hands are a little slow. Okay, playing the video now.
these messages.
Right, so what we just saw was the intro video for the Codebreakers Cards. I have to say that is a very grand introduction for a fresh new product. I very much like it, but I do have some questions for you. Very interesting.
Sure.
Um, so, what exactly is Codebreakers Cafe?
Well, Codebreaker Cafe is our 2019 campaign for launching the cards because more than just having the game in itself, it was finding a way to socialize. It's a game. It's not about just bringing more theory. It was about making grammar theory practical and applicable for my students because they have busy schedules, they have busy lives, and I wanted to create a creative, playful environment. So the
Oh,
Codebreaker
actually,
Cafe.
Suzanne, one moment. Can you lower down the volume on your tab where the video live stream is playing? Sorry to cut you off like that. I can hear the feedback.
Okay.
Can you just mute it altogether?
Okay. Well, I muted my microphone. Is that okay?
No, not the microphone. The sound cutting
Volume.
out.
The volume. Yeah.
Yes, like turn that completely down.
Okay then. So I muted that.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so you can continue. Very sorry about that, but please proceed.
Okay. No problem. So Codebreaker Cafe, the words cafe really they mean comprehension,
Yeah, I remember seeing
accuracy,
that. I'm gonna put that back on screen for
fluency,
the viewers.
and expansion of words.
Right. Comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and expansion of words. And you
Yes.
even have your own merch.
Yes,
That
we
is
do.
it.
Yes, we do. So the whole idea was for clients to
Mm-hmm.
come and sit back and really enjoy. Now, yes,
Uh-huh.
they sometimes have coffee and they have snacks with us because it's about giving them an opportunity to experience the language in a real life setting.
Right.
And in creating that real life setting, to be able to, have them relaxed and have them discuss topics that are sometimes difficult that when you're in a traditional lesson plan, you're so busy following the curriculum, you don't get a chance to diverge or have create spontaneous thoughts in it and have a flow of conversation. And that is what the Codebreaker Cafes are about, to kind of get people to understand what are we doing. It's come, sit down, let's converse, let's work on fluency, let's develop comprehension. And at the same time, what the cards do is that it helps them focus on the accuracy. Now you'd say like, how the accuracy? Well, it's the dynamics of the cards, and we'll talk a little bit about that further on in our session. But that was one of my key elements to ensure that my adult business executives had a competent tool that allowed them to develop their autocorrect skills. Because their autocorrect skills as an adult, when you're out there in the world of work, you do not have the luxury to make errors. You are working on negotiations, you are persuading, you are speaking with people, you're discussing contracts. You have to have a certain element of clarity when you are dealing with this, and you can't have your confidence shaken because you're not sure what you're saying in a different language. And the game focuses. So that's why accuracy is a key element of our Codebreaker Cafe sessions.
Right.
And of course, expansion of words, which is the last element of it. Once we have had students, once their mind is open, word building is exponential. It just goes on and on and on and on and on.
That is true. And I'm just gonna put it back on screen one more time. The four core areas of Codebreaker Cafe: comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and expansion of words, which was just explained by Suzanne. Now, this is where we go into the meat of the discussion. So the whole idea behind this webinar is to show why dual immersion will become better, more efficient, and more useful than translating. So how different is dual immersion from translating? How different it is from going on Google Translate and finding out what hello is in Spanish?
Well, basic phrases and words, that's easy.
Mhm.
But when it comes to translating, most of my students, I literally have them banned. You cannot use translators, not unless you have a higher level of comprehension and understanding, because the translators create bad habits. They depend upon the translator and they don't do the thinking process. A translator can come in handy after, once I can see that their thinking process, that they can
Mhm.
think for themselves in the language, they can generate spontaneous ideas, they can elaborate concepts. Once they are doing that in their English part of their brain, then a translator becomes a word finder. Basically, it's to
Oh, so
help
it becomes
them.
like a thesaurus or a dictionary.
Yeah, exactly. Only that's the only function of it.
Okay.
And then learning context and connotation is something that they need to be aware of, something that I make very, it's one of the second principles. I teach 8 principles in the transition from dual immersion to what would be, I tell them, if you want to translate, learn to do it well. And to do it well,
Right.
there's a certain skill set that you need to have. You need to consider certain factors to translate that they normally don't consider. People just think of their language and then they toss out the words. And those words, when they're aligned, do not necessarily say the exact same thing. Culturally, it may have a different connotation. You may be insulting someone. You may not be aware of what it is you're doing. And those things in a boardroom, in a business negotiation, in a contract as a teacher, as an ESL teacher in a company, my God, it is a huge responsibility because they are trusting me to help them with the words that they need to take their business to another level. I cannot afford to mess up. And
Right.
that is where the measure of accuracy comes in, because the burden of responsibility is upon what words I help them. So, therefore, in that sense of accountability, all of that went into creating Codebreaker,
Right.
because I needed a tool that took 7 years of study and condensed it into tangible mind map that students could literally work with, toss it over, think it out, see the bad areas, jump over it, and at the same time be able to comprehend and create spontaneous thoughts and not be held back by fear. And that's what the game was doing.
That does sound very important. And you had a lot of your hands while teaching in the corporate world. Can you imagine a business deal going bad because they didn't
Well, do
translate
you know
properly?
there are some famous translation blunders that
Hmm.
are $1 million blunders, and not only that, they also resulted in death. In France, there was a case of radiation poisoning that resulted in 4 patients, I think 2 patients losing their lives because of poor translation of radiation doses in an element. In
Hmm.
Germany, there was a hospital that did a surgery on over 45 knee surgeries, and it's recorded. And actually, I have a class on that, which is like translation blunders that it is a huge responsibility. Not only was the cost and the timing to repair, they badly translated one of the ingredients or the medications that they needed, or in the process. So
Hmm.
the people went home after their knee surgery. They had issues with it, did not know why they were not healing properly. And when they returned, they realized that it was a translation blunder that resulted in multi-million-dollar issues, both for the hospital, the patient, etc., because
Uh-huh.
someone was lapse in their translation.
So dual immersion would increase accuracy to the point where that will no longer be an issue. That seems amazing, and that is a very important factor that I never took into to play. Just how
Well,
important translating is.
what dual immersion does is that it allows the person to use their L1 knowledge and
Uh-huh.
apply it
Wait,
with L2.
L1, you're
Their
referring to the
first
first
language.
language, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And it's allowing them, because sometimes with adults in particular, I've found that they don't have a sense of control.
Hmm.
So, if you're a manager of an international company, etc., and then you're standing before a language that makes you feel very tiny,
Hmm.
it's something that attacks your ego. It attacks that part of you because you're living day to day, ordering, organizing, etc. And then you stand before a language that cripples you emotionally. Depending on your emotional intelligence, people have different ways that they react under that pressure. Some people snap, some people are aggressive, some people they freeze. It's a flight or fight response to how that feeling makes them feel. Therefore, when I give them Codebreaker, what Codebreaker does is that it gives them back control. So with dual immersion, they're like, but it's my language. I said, well, yes, if you're a high reader in Spanish, it's a very easy transition. If you're a low reader, it builds you up and it gives you the tools to increase comprehension at a very high rate. For many years, I suffered because we would be working with like one sentence to, it would be very difficult to advance with paragraphs. And after Codebreaker, my students were reading 2-3 pages all within an hour and a half and more in discussion and talking. And it allows us so much mental flexibility that we're in the process of documenting everything that CVC Codebreaker does to bring it out and to present it. But really, it has been very, very amazing. All the things that I have been able to accomplish using this very simple tool.
Yeah, that seems amazing, especially with your mandate behind Codebreakers. Now, you're very experienced in the field. You have, just to go back to your introduction, you have over
Sure.
29,000 hours in
Yes.
teaching in the ESL field, which stands for, go ahead.
That 29,000, and that does not take into account my 8 years teaching as a high school teacher in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, wow.
Only Honduras.
Only in
And what
Honduras.
only in Honduras. That is because I taught intensively for 12 years.
Uh,
12-hour shifts. It was 12 to 14 hours basically because it was kind of like the height of my business taking off and no other family. So we didn't have babies at that time. So therefore those things impacted on I was able to cultivate a culture in where I could actually promote social conversations in English as well as, so it was very intensive. It was like creating my own little bubble within Honduras to be able to deal with my husband is Honduran, but it was not my country. So, it was part of that transition. So I just lost myself in work.
Well, with all of your experience, once again, I'm just still surprised about the 29,000 hours. That figure alone, I'm intimidated by you. But I'm sure the viewers are interested in knowing, when exactly did you start Codebreakers Cafe? When did all of it start? Just
Well,
give me a
Code
year.
Cafe, the terminology with cafe was born out of 2018, the terminology.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like how we were able to put together what it is we're doing. But Codebreaker has been since 2000. Um, I can go back as far as 2006, the first set of
2006.
cutouts that I had. And then 2009, I had students asking, I had my version, and they were like, teacher, can we get one? Can we buy one?
13 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, and
And
oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
no, no, it's just that when I cut them out and I made all the cards and I had my version and I invested in a machine for laminating it. And then my students were like, can we get one? I was like, well, it wasn't exactly so quickly. But it was because of my students insisting that I started exploring, can I turn this into a marketable product? Can I
Right.
turn this into
And
my own
in
Uno?
fact, let's show the viewers the cards. Let's show them what it looks like.
Okay.
I'm sure most of us are familiar with the regular playing cards. Now, this isn't just your regular 52 playing cards. How many
No.
cards is in this pack, by the way?
Well, in order to manage what it is I was wanting, this game was I remember I mentioned I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago has a huge all fours card culture.
Right.
It is something that most Trinidadians, if you have friends, it is
So that's where the
everyone.
inspiration came from.
Yes, one, because I was missing my family. I was cut off from everyone and everything that was traditional. We have internet now that allows, but in 2000, when I arrived in Honduras, there was no internet. It cost a lot of money just to call my country for 3 minutes. And 3 minutes using an operator. I mean, it was like going from 24/7 cable and internet to a place where it took us at least a year before we started working in a setting where we would have access to that kind of communication. And then, even then, it was a question of whenever. It wasn't something that everyone had access to. So I've been able to see the transition. But the game in itself, it has over 105 cards because it's both Spanish and English. And I can show you this element here, for example.
Actually, let me just remind the viewers the purpose of the cards. Hold it up one more time. Now, this pack of cards, it helps English speakers think in Spanish and
Yes.
Spanish speakers think in English. If any of the viewers have seen the introduction video on the Project Jaguar page that announces our partnership, you can see that is the exact purpose of the cards, and it's a very amazing gameplay. It's an interesting experience as your mind clicks and it begins to understand a different language that you never thought would have been possible. And once again, this is only possible by using dual immersion instead of translating, which is very interesting.
What?
Now, go ahead.
Sorry, it was just like showing this. These are the cards that are in the game, and I wanted to have something that was of a high quality. So there's a glossy finish, and getting all these elements. Now you can just print on cardboard and cut it out, but it was about. I also wanted to impact the sense of national identity and pride in the learner. It's very different if you just toss something that looks cheap before a person, as opposed to giving them something that is of a different quality. It changes their own perception of value in themselves because you're treating them with a higher value. So I wanted something that really impacted the learners in the classroom. And my dream of dreams is to get it into public schools, because in public schools, we're literally providing an equal opportunity for anyone to learn a second language. And not just learn it, I mean, how well they learn it truly depends on the individual's desire to expand their vocabulary, but they would all have the same opportunity and they would have the same elements. And this literally is something that I would ask my adult students to look at. You can look at the difference in the sizes. This is something that's very important. This deck, this is the Spanish deck. And this one, this is the English deck. This is equal to this and vice versa. So an English brain has to expand its learning to encompass all of this. We have to take this and multiply it into many pieces. Whereas this deck can grow, but when the Spanish thinker faces English, the Spanish thinker needs to condense this and understand that this is enough to communicate in English. And this is what freaks them out, because their brain has all of this and they're like, well, why, how? And they need a way to see that this can work like this. And that's the code breaking that God has allowed me to do. All those 29,000 hours teaching both English, Spanish, and French in a work setting, literally, I think it changed my perception. It's not the same to teach 20 years in the same school, same curriculum, same book over and over and over, to teach the wide cross-section of companies, characters, finance, marketing, production, the different things and the different languages that I did for this to be produced.
It's really amazing. Sorry, I was actually just typing in the chat, asking the viewers what they think about the design of the cards. I personally love it, and it matches the quality that you're providing. Now, how has your experience been with teachers who have used this in the past? You spoke a bit about the students; they were very excited to use it. The students that you taught, but
Well, I have a picture. I don't know if you can see this. If you can see
oh
this
yes, we
picture.
can see it. Yes.
If you can see this picture, those are the faces of two teachers. Look at this. I mean, now every marketing person has told me you need better pictures. This I cannot repeat. These pictures are teachers playing Codebreaker in a training session. Those smiles, look at the hands, look at the body language, look at the gestures, the squeal of delight. You clasp your hands when you're like, wow, what is this? Because this is a Spanish speaking teacher winning against an English speaking teacher.
Wow.
One round.
Profound.
Because they understand the grammar concepts and they were able, like, how did you do that? And the Spanish team was like super psyched that they could actually beat the English speaking team.
That's amazing.
This is my evidence. And I love this picture. No matter how much they tell me, you need a better resolution. We just need to repeat the sessions. But photos like this, and I'd like to share another picture also. This is on another team and another place. Engaged learning is also something that the games provide. If you look at all the faces, and if we were to look at all the eyes are centered on what's going on the table, everyone wants to know what's going to happen next. Now, these are adults. Can you imagine what we could do with kids if we could get them to focus this way?
Yeah.
And wake up their critical, analytical thinking skills at an earlier age? I mean, it's something, that's what fascinates me. That's what drives me with this.
Right. And it actually goes back to when we met. I met you in Jamaica 2 weeks ago at the Happy Teachers TESOL Expo, which was also the launch of the TESOL Caribbean, Action
Yeah.
TESOL Caribbean, my
Yeah.
apologies.
Yeah.
And you got the chance to have Donald from the British Council to play your game. You had Patrice Palmer from
Yeah.
Canada to play your game. So you have a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Developments. You have a lot of developments coming up. How
Thank
are you handling them so far? What's changed?
Well, you know, it's the, the excitement is there, and it's finding, you know, it's finding the right opportunity to be able to. With Donald, it's something that's going to be happening for next year. So, what was interesting about Donald is, like, if you could take pictures to see adults pushing their way in because they want to win and they want to get their cards. You know, that's one of the most fascinating things for me, observing my students when they're playing. Because you see different styles of winning. You have the aggressive winners, you have the funny winners, you have the cheaters, and they're all there. So it opens up a whole different conversation on values with the students.
Right.
So really, the teacher is just a monitor in the process.
Right. Now, we do have a question from someone in the chats.
Yeah.
They would like you to explain further how the cards work.
Okay.
I know this may be a little bit of a touchy subject, but is there anything else you can share regarding
Well,
the cards?
the thing is, it's a very simple principle with the cards. It's terms of being the quickest on the draw, the fastest person who wins.
Right. So that's how the game works.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You have the playing deck. We have the deck of cards.
How many cards does each person get?
Well, the players will have 10 cards. So they have these 10 cards. So you have an I card. Let me see. Let me show.
Okay, no problem.
Okay then. So this is basically what you would have. So let's say that the player cards would be these 10 cards. So you've got, yeah, so you've got like 3 special cards, and then you have the I card, the you card, the he, she, or it card, the we and they card. And then you have 3 special cards that I've found when teaching ESL. Not everyone is familiar with the concept of infinitives, gerunds, and past participles that are regular. The irregulars are easy, but there is a difference, especially when you have schools that consider themselves bilingual, and in reality, they are monolinguals with a modicum of Spanish in their program. So you have a lot of schools in countries like Honduras that are managing full immersion programs. A full immersion program is where the children are exposed principally to English and they just have one or two classes in Spanish. What happens is that I've found that the end product is a high level social speaker, but not necessarily apt for the professional world. Because when I want to hire a bilingual professional, I need someone that can turn over a contract in English and in Spanish, that can go and negotiate with a client if I am not available and discuss what's going on. And you've got graduates coming out where they can talk about movies and songs and maybe some social projects and a little bit of politics. But beyond that, they don't have the thinking coping skills to transition to the patients to read a contract and check to see what words are correct or
Right,
incorrect.
so this game is developed to get them to that stage, and
Yeah.
that's what the gameplay is
It's
all
about
about.
focusing, yep, the specifics.
Right.
That's where the accuracy comes in.
Right. Now, there is more to this. There is a training, and the teachers will have to go through. There was a specific instance that you were telling me about, where a teacher, she was able to use it with her students, but she didn't get the full grasp of how powerful this game is.
Well, for example, we have had teachers at one of the schools that we did this. In high school, the teacher was able. She said that it was amazing because the students they turned over quickly. So you have like 3 or 4 different kinds of audiences. In full immersion programs where the kids speak Spanish, that's their native language, and they're learning English, when their brain will naturally want to code switch. Code switching is a natural process that they will go through. Now, some people in the past thought code switching was a sign of confusion, but actually it's the brain making sense of patterns. So actually when a student is able to mix codes and use it, like for example, my son, when he was younger, he used to have this funny joke. We would say that, I would say when I was presenting him to my mom, this is my mom, I'm her daughter. And he was learning to say, he was learning masculine and feminine in Spanish in his school. So he would hear me say daughter and he would crack up and he would be fall down laughing and be like, why are you laughing? Oh, mommy, well, you're a daughter, and then that is car is for the dotos. Now, dotos is not a word, it does not exist. But he thought that if I was a daughter and I was female, his childlike brain created daughters to say daddy's car was for the boys. So the daughters would go there and the daughters would go with me. And incredibly enough,
I
I
get it.
mean, he would hear me and I found that fascinating. Here's this kid joining together and I could see what people meant by code switching, and they're like my little guinea pigs watching my children developed in the process, to observe them and to see the way that they're thinking, and then take that and bring it back to my classroom in order to improve, because I learned that from my students, my adult students. It's about continuous improvement. So what can I do to improve, one, their time, to increase their productivity, which is where the accuracy comes in, and make it meaningful, something that they could share with their family if they went home. This was kind of one of the elements too, because there was high pressure environments that they were teaching in. I really taught middle and upper level executives. So it's people with a lot of pressure. And then I'm there to pressure them to be better with their English. It just seemed the demands of it, and it was demanding on their time with their children time. So I wanted something that facilitated social interaction at home. The dads and the moms could play together, the kids could come together, not necessarily be segregated in their socializing, but actually um, they could evaluate also. It's actually spectacular for evaluations in a play form. You're playing the game, but you're definitely, when the students don't get it correct, you will see off the bat. The teacher can take notes. You will know where you're making mistakes, what's wrong, and what you need to come back to.
Right, and this is all only possible if you give them that required training. Now, how exactly can they get this training? Where do they go?
Well, we have a project. We have one course that we opened on Project Jaguar. This is what's exciting about the Project Jaguar partnership that we have. We've opened one course there that we can try and do it online. We haven't done this before, but
It's usually
this
been
is,
in person.
yes,
Okay.
it is, because normally what's very particular about this is that we normally do an intensive 4-hour training, which is kind of like a reset button.
Right.
Now that reset button, people have asked us if we can reduce it to 2 hours. I have found that the brain tends to switch back to its normal habits after 2 hours. It's not the same. After four, there's like this mental exhaustion that they go through when they just relax and they actually receive. It's part of the process of the reprogramming. I've tried to explain to people. Some people find it difficult to believe that this can happen in 4 hours. But I have someone actually that I just started with the low beginner or almost no previous experience with English. She is flying off the handle because she's like, Sue, I can create two ideas spontaneously because she was able to comprehend future tense and present tense in one session, an hour and a half session. But this is me teaching directly with my Codebreaker learning cycle using, based on teachers' requests, we came up with, they wanted a book. Teachers asked us for a book, and this is our book.
Right. So just to clarify, the teachers receive training on how to use the cards in their classroom. Can you show the cards first one more time?
Sure.
Right, so they receive training on using these cards. It said it's 102 cards.
100,
That help 105, sorry. That helps English speakers think in Spanish and Spanish speakers think in English by
yes.
expanding or compressing their vocabulary. And then they can then use these cards to make the class not only more lively, but more effective by using dual immersion instead of translating. Correct?
Correct. One of
Okay.
the issues that we looked at is that, we're becoming more and more aware that the internet has taught us that we have diverse learners. I
Uh-huh.
think academics and investigators may be aware of it, psychologists may be aware of it, but now teachers are becoming aware of how different our learners are. So it's not
Mm,
only about the academics. Therefore, not everyone can read and not everyone is about theory. And we've seen that with the kinds of individuals who become successful in business. And you say the kids who came first were not necessarily the ones who are the most successful business people out there. Therefore, in
right.
that process, what the
Wait.
game does is that it brings kinetic learning into play.
Oh,
I think the live feed, has
yes,
the live feed been interrupted?
it just got interrupted, but it's coming back up. Okay, it's back up. Sorry about that. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe just a small outage.
Very interesting. I think I see a comment here where someone says that textbooks do not focus on gerunds, appositives, and regular participles. The thing
Mm,
about it is that I found that in especially when teaching Spanish and English, um, you have to understand what this is. If you don't, especially when it comes to, there are many applications in Spanish where the infinitive in English, no, the infinitive in Spanish would actually be a gerund in English. Now, when you're in advanced English and this is not clear, the translation, the literal translations that students make, they mess it up all the time because they're not getting the context, they're not getting the differences because they're just doing it without comprehending the why. And what this does is that it allows them to explore the why. It allows them, then, teacher, why did I get it wrong? What is it about? Then the students are asking deep questions about grammar. I mean, one principal told us is that I had taken the arid density of grammar and made it dynamic,
really?
which I think
That
I
that's
love.
amazing.
Yeah, I love that. It's one of the best bilingual schools that we have here in Honduras, and they said thank you for showing us that we're not bilingual, but we're monolingual, and they took steps towards making their program more balanced.
And this is only possible with your product. This is a unique, one of a kind pack of
Yes,
cards, not used for gambling, but for learning a new language.
definitely.
And in fact, I'm gonna show you your course on the screen right now. So, for the viewers that are watching right now, this is the CBC Codebreaker Teacher Induction course. Uh, so basically, you explore dual immersion methodology where L1 or language 1 is used to impact L2 acquisition or learning the second language to become a super teacher using the CBC Codebreaker card game to challenge and shape dynamic student learning. So you had mentioned that it usually takes 4 days, but because it's online, you are able to maybe cut this down to 2 days, correct?
Well, the thing is that I don't know whether anyone would want to be online for 4 hours. That's very different, being sitting, because when I have them for
Right.
4 hours, I can mix movement into it, get them up, we take a break, etc. Online, I do not know, because it's about the reset button. What I need to do is to break down some traditional ways of thinking and literally give them an opportunity, because there's a big difference between students who have no previous experience and how quickly, and you actually see accelerated learning theory come into practice. You see students deliberately creating ideas in like, for example, what I experienced this morning. And the person said, Sue, if I do this, I could speak English in a month. I said, well, yeah, it depends on each student, how motivated they are and how much they go through the expansion of words. But yes, it could be as quickly as a week to 3 weeks to
Right. So
6 months.
it's capable, it's flexible to the learner and how motivated they are, how much they want to put towards it.
Yes,
But your goal is to teach them within 2 days, knowing they may not be online for 4 hours, and these
yeah,
teachers are then transformed into teachers who can use dual immersion.
yes.
And would you say that this would make their lives easier as teachers?
I think so, in the sense that the challenge for teachers in it is that sometimes they believe that they need to be experts in grammar. Actually, no. Actually, there's a very great opportunity for the teacher to model learning themselves to the student. So like when I encounter something, that a question that stumps me that I may not have considered or not contemplated depending on the experience of my students, then we sit down and said, okay, let's explore together. It could be homework, they explore, we come back, we manage the topic, we look at it. And as a teacher, as a responsible teacher, you have to do your work. That's what we're there for, to mentor it, to show it. And then I find that the bonding between the teacher as a learner and teacher working together with the students, that's a whole different dynamics in terms of connectivity with students.
Right. And we actually have one message in the chat that one person pointed out that textbooks are barely mentioning these rules.
Yes,
And they can clearly see where the cards address that shortfall.
yes,
Hmm.
definitely. The shortfalls of things that I have students who, I had a student, for example, that didn't understand the difference between they didn't know the word infinitive. And there are certain words they couldn't identify with things like in conjugations. Now, it's very difficult for, as an outsider, my native language is English, of course, but I'm here in a different country. I studied in a dual immersion program, a traditional dual immersion program where you had equal time for language, equal time for literature in the high school that I went to. And my reading was higher. I remember using the word oligarquia in Honduras and having a very educated individual tell me that's not a word. But I was like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, if you have anarquia and you have all these words, oligarquia must also exist, like oligarchy. But they challenged me on it. So I became reticent and I was like, all right, I'm going to check this out. So I didn't fight it. When I went to a dictionary, I was able to confirm the word. And then I realized as a bilingual learner, we can actually achieve a higher level of reading than a traditional native speaker, depending on our reading culture. And when these things happen, it really causes, it opens different opportunities and it opens different elements.
Right. So true.
Thank you
Now,
very much, person who says that they would recommend the product by the explanation. Thank you very much for hearing, for listening. And I spent 4 years. I had a platform because we wanted to see, well, how could we get to teachers, because I didn't, the reason why this product was not out before, since it was created to now 2009, we're in 2019, it's literally like 10 years in the making, because I didn't just want to toss it out there and just have it sit on a shelf. It's real. People can break down mental barriers to learning another language. You can think in English. You can take a student. I was reading about a little bit about language coding. I was looking for some terminologies and clarifying things before coming online with you guys. And one of the things that it was exploring was that in language coding, what goes on is how we listen to sounds and how we decipher sounds and how we decipher letters and writing. That's one part of it. But another part of it is the syntax. What do I do with those words and sounds? And when it comes to grammar, you have all these different building blocks in it. But if the students aren't aware of it, I wanted to take 7 years of study and compress it, because in my country, you do 1 or 2 languages for 7 years. And then when you go to the university in 4 years, you're coming out with 2 or 3 more languages. Now, what is it about that 7 year period that prepares your brain so that at the university, you're coming out with a certain level? It's because the code has been recognized in 7 years. What Codebreaker does is that it compacts 7 years into 4 hours.
That's amazing.
So I don't rush.
This is going to change how people learn languages. You know that, right?
I
Have you received those those comments before?
Yes, because we're working on a version that takes more than one languages. This version looks at Spanish and English. I've used the Spanish and French version. I took a French-speaking engineer and taught her to speak Spanish, read and write Spanish in 3 months. It was a upper executive, a VP of distribution's wife. I was hired to help her. She said, "Thank you for giving me back my freedom," because she didn't need a bodyguard. She didn't need someone to translate for her. She could do it on her own. Her husband was like, "When did you learn?" And of course, she's speaking Spanish with her French accent, which was just as beautiful as listening to her. But she was a high reader in French. She had a very high level of vocabulary, and by giving her the tools to explore how to read and write in Spanish, this woman was able to take off. I mean, high learners, when I say high learners, people who have a high reading culture, who are able to do different things like that, it's amazing what they can do. And new learners who have zero experience with the language, they learn to build up strong foundation blocks in Spanish and in English from the beginning, from the offset, from day one.
Amazing. So this is sorry. So the cards are tailored to both high and low learners.
Oh yeah, yeah, at every level. But the
Great.
4 hours, really what it does is that it helps us with that reset button.
Okay.
And everyone tends to see that.
And just so I know, the age range of who can use the cards. Just so
Well,
I
it
can
was
know.
not designed for kids, but my son, when you're a working mom, sometimes our children end up in our offices.
Right.
So my
Well, I
son, I
wouldn't
think,
know. Sorry.
no, but I think in the video, in the introduction video, there's a picture where the students are playing on the table and there's a little boy looking on. That little boy was my son. And he would watch what was happening with the young people. And then he would say, "Mommy, I want to play." I said, "You can play." Let's say in second grade, he was learning present, past, and future. So because there was a certain element, and I really applaud his Spanish teacher because I think she did a great job, he was able to relate certain concepts and he started playing. That was like an extra for me that it could be used. So teachers have recommended, like from third grade onwards, it's an excellent help at that level. It's an excellent play tool.
And just so anyone who's joining the webinar now is just now joining, can you show the cards one more time as you're explaining? So I wanted to have a visual of.
So this is our Codebreaker deck. This is the current deck in Spanish, and this is the current deck in English. And this deck comes in 4 different colors. We have red, blue, purple, and yellow. And the reason this was done, I didn't want to use too many colors because as human beings, we tend to be very smart. So what tends to happen is that students tend to they just group by color, or they watch what is going on, and then it's a subtle element of color that is on it, that so we could determine who's the winner. Because at one point in time, when they learn, after 2 or 3 rounds, everyone is learning. And they're like, "Teacher, but who's first?" Hey, everyone's winning, everyone's learning. But they just want to be who's the fastest. So it's like the Wild Wild West, who's the fastest on the drawer. And that's generally what happens.
So basically, they're competing to learn. That's amazing. You've tricked them into learning. That's great.
We can't tell
need to
them.
give
I mean,
this to all of my friends.
They start asking these deep questions about grammar, and you kind of have to up your game to be able to give them the answer. Because they're like, but wait, and then you see the connection. And one of the things that's fascinating for me is that every time we go through the process, there is a physiological reaction when the learning takes place. The pupils dilate, the frowns go away, they spread out, they stretch their legs, some people scratch their head, they stretch their arms. When that light bulb moment comes on, that wow factor moment, that's my adrenaline. That's my drug of choice.
I can see how that
It's just
inspires you to
amazing.
do a lot better as well. So we are actually edging towards 1 hour, and we have
Uh,
received some amazing. I didn't even realize the time passed so quickly. Received some amazing questions and comments from teachers and students in the comment section. Uh, and I just want to, sorry, I just want to dedicate the next 5 minutes to any extra questions that
sure.
any teachers, anyone who's watching the live stream right now may have. So this is the Q&A time. Um, if none of you, well, I'll allow you to type your questions. In the meantime, I do have one more question of my own that I'm looking for. Um, no questions yet. Now, the training.
Yes.
Would you say that the training is tailored to teachers who, I don't know how to put this, currently teach within the ESL field, or would this be able to provide a bridge to getting into the ESL field?
Well, it can be for someone,
Uh-huh.
because remember I mentioned about a teacher as a learner.
Hmm.
If teachers, because there's something about there, people say the teacher is a part of that group of people who have God complexes because we have a certain amount of authority when we're in our classrooms,
Hmm.
and teachers like doctors, and they tend to have that, and it's a very negative thing about us. But at the same time, the game brings humility to the teacher, because if the teacher is willing to stand in front of a group and say, hey guys, let's play this, we can both learn a second language while we're playing this, and they record their session of learning and they literally model, and the kids see the teacher making an effort to pronounce and laugh at themselves in the classroom together with them. How motivating is it for students? Actually, we did a project like that. I did a pilot here in Honduras with, we invested 60 hours in 40 days. And we used three kinds of teachers. We used one Spanish speaking teacher, all Spanish. We used, to test that theory of teacher to model learning, we had one teacher that was 50-50 bilingual, and we had one full bilingual teacher, because they said they can't clone me, so they need to see how it works with other teachers using it. So the other teachers that came on board, what they did is that I showed them the methodology. I gave them we did the 4-hour induction with them. We gave them tips on how to go about it. I provided the content, and wow, I mean, it was amazing. The kids, and these were kids from very low income area, kids from the poorest areas of San Pedro Sula, the city that I live in. And these young kids, at the end of 40 days, and I have it, I think I haven't posted it, but I have video evidence of these kids reading and writing. There's a young man who talks about being able to translate a paragraph, a simple, very simple paragraph based on what we built up. He said he was shocked. I thought it would take them, it was like 5 lines of a paragraph, and I thought it would take them maybe the rest of the class. They
Hmm.
all did it in like 5 minutes.
Wow.
I was bowled over in that evaluation. I was like, it was fascinating to observe, and the researcher in me wants to sit like a little fly and watch that process over and over and see what was it, what did we do. But the kids were highly motivated by the teacher, they were motivating him. They were, go mister, and wait, how did you do it? And he was obligated to do his homework, because if he came to class and he didn't model the ethics and values of trying, then the kids would become demotivated. That was the negative to it, but he didn't. He went full speed ahead. The kids were highly motivated. They worked together with him. It was really fascinating. And we have all of that documented. We did evaluations every 3 days. We taught spelling in one day. One of the financial investors of the project said, "These kids are spelling better than my own children who are in full bilingual schools. What did you do?" And it was not only the Codebreaker cards, but it was the spelling bee cards. I innovated on the sound system that exists in the alphabet that's already there, that's out there for all teachers. I just innovated it and put it together in a fun way, and I was able to get groups of kids spelling in an hour. It was just fascinating. It was fascinating.
That does sound really fascinating. So, um, no, this all sounds like something I've never heard of before. I really look forward to seeing where this goes. Once again, for the teachers that are just joining or just need a recap, yeah, this is called the Codebreakers Cards. Suzanne, do you mind showing it one more time on the screen?
Yeah, sure.
And show the packaging. I really like the packaging. What's on the back? Is
The back
anything?
of it, well, it
Uh-huh.
has, as teacherpreneurs, this is where the other training comes from. Teachers who we also help in my company, we help teachers
Oh, okay, that's
if
the
they
back.
have products and they have stuff like that to be able to give them ideas and tips about how to bring their product to the market.
Right.
That's another kind of consultancy that we also do with teachers so that they themselves can experience. Because over the years, we all have boxes of stuff that we do. We have tons of material and content that we've been using. And one of the ways that this became affordable for us is that to get a packaging that's this color, etc., it was ridiculously expensive and outside of our budget. What we were able to do was that, well, I prayed. This comes from a lot of inspiration and asking God a lot of our direction and where to go. And what came out of this was one man said, cover them. So we used a particular paper to cover the boxes, and then we were able to print stickers that were able to cover the box as well.
Wow,
So therefore,
that's
we
a pretty
created a
good
package
way to
that
get
was
around it.
super inexpensive and allowed to present a product that is eye-catching to
This is
individuals
very eye-catching to me. Yes.
to be able to see it, and they weren't sure about what to do with it. So now this gives us a platform for when we go to technology now, 10 years after, there are ways that you can produce elements of this color and with print, and it's much more accessible than when I started doing this 10 years ago. It was ridiculously expensive.
But you
Ridiculously
were able to
expensive.
get through it, push through, deliver
Yeah.
your product, and here we are today.
Yes.
Yes. So, Suzanne, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm very excited to be here, to even have met you in Jamaica 3 weeks, 3 weeks? Was it 3 weeks ago? It's been
Yeah.
quite some
Yeah.
time. And now just to see where you are with Codebreaker Cafe, and with the Codebreaker cards, it's very exciting. So hopefully this provides all the teachers and everyone else who's watching the webinar how dual immersion is going to is going to replace translating, my tongue, and where Codebreakers cards fits in as an important piece of that puzzle. So Suzanne, do you have any last words, any final sayings for these teachers before we close off tonight?
Well, reach out. We have our course up on Project Jaguar for
You
teacher
can show it
training.
on screen.
Also, we are also willing to travel to different places. Get your schools together if they're willing to explore and see if they want to see how Codebreaker can literally transition. Also, schools that are interesting to transition from dual immersion programs, from full immersion programs. That is also it's part of the consultancy that we're doing. So reach out. I have my blog. It's Building Better by Literates on WordPress. You can look
Yeah.
for us.
I'll definitely
Where
share the links on the webinar page on Facebook. We also have Kimon Myers, who is now watching the webinar. You did play the game with her while you were
Yes,
in Jamaica.
yes,
Yes. Huge shout out to you, Kimon Myers. It was
yes.
also a pleasure meeting you as well.
Joan also has had experience teaching in Colombia. She was like, "My God, Sue, I would have loved to have had these in my experience in Colombia because, you know, it's the game was created for all the gaps. I think I saw someone in a comment talk about the cards addressing shortfalls.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with the final product. University graduates are coming out and they need to learn another language, but yet you saw gaps in there's so much curriculum, there's so much to follow through that certain important elements that we may have learned when it wasn't so thick and condensed in terms of content. Um, that's kind of like where the game comes in, and it allows you, it's like an equalizer. It sees like if something is known, you move on with it. If another thing is done, it allows you to kind of like gauge the students and where they are, and you can mentor the students and their learning process. You can see their decision making process when it comes to choosing which card to play. You see the reckless thinkers, you see the fast thinkers, you see the slow thinkers, you see the observant thinkers, you see the cowards, and they will not toss a card and they're waiting. And you see the cheaters who are just waiting to see what everyone else does. There's so many different kinds. And then you tell them, okay, guys, look at all the different ways you're doing stuff. And then, so you're working values into the process as well. So,
Right. So it's really, really exciting to just once again to just hear about your experiences, the
thank
process
you
to
very much.
of getting here. You've had some minor setbacks, but you've made a major comeback as
Thank you
well.
very much. It's amazing. Codebreaker Cafe is our comeback. It's what actually terminology came from one of the first teachers who played our games.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing, I think, was finishing up his master's, and they came across the acronym, and he was like, Sue, cafe can also mean this, and like Codebreaker. I said, it's perfect. Codebreaker Cafe workshops are what we're calling them. We come out, we have good food, we hang out, we play, and learning is
Fun.
unforgettable.
Oh, unforgettable. Right.
It's
That's
fun, unforgettable, and it is fast. All those things all in one package.
all right. So, once
Thank
again,
you, Jovan.
very excited to share this package with the teachers who are watching now and have been watching throughout the past hour and 13 minutes of this amazing conversation that we've had. So, Suzanne, once again, thank you
Timon's
so much.
response, but pity wins. Yes, it does happen. It does happen. We have to let them win sometimes. I
Um,
remember the moment when my son told me, I said, honey, I need to play with a client. Can you come and play with us? And he stopped and he's like, he must have been like in fourth grade, and he turns around. Yeah, but do they know how to play? I said, what do you mean if they know how to play? He was like, I realized he had reached a point where he felt that he was so great at playing it that he was bored playing with someone who was a new learner. He wanted to play, but it had to be with someone that could play because he just wanted to win.
wow,
So the winning factor was highly motivating for a lot of people.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So this is an amazing resource for all the teachers out there.
Thank
And
you,
once
Jack.
again, Suzanne, I cannot thank you enough for allowing us to have this hour discussion and just to share it with everyone else. Not only with the teachers, this video is also available on the Facebook page under the events. Hopefully Suzanne will share it on her page. Project Jaguar will be heavily sharing this, and we will also be leaving that link to the course that teachers can take. It's a two day course, 2 hours per day, not
Yeah.
too long, and the teachers can then learn the full extent of the cards. What you've seen today is just a little glimpse in how useful and how effective these cards are. So once again, Suzanne, uh, thank you so much for being here with us and for introducing Codebreaker Cafe and the CBC Codebreaker Cafe cards. Well,
Thank you
sorry,
very much.
Codebreaker cards, and we hope to have a discussion like this later on.
Okay.
All
Thank you
right,
very much.
wave to
Bye.
everyone. Yeah.
Bye, everyone. It was a pleasure.
All right. See you.